guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Carly and welcome to my YouTube family. So today's video is going to be another top 10 category video. Today I'm going to do powders. I'm going to do my top 10 pressed powders and also top 10 loose powders. Now I do have a combination of drugstore and high-end powders, so there's a little bit of everything for everyone. And these are just my favorite powders that I've used over the space of a couple of years now. I have been a makeup artist at MAC for over 4.5 years. Now I just do freelance and I'm also a primary school teacher. But these products I have definitely been using for a while and they are hands down my favorite powders. So if you are looking for a new pressed powder or a loose powder, I do have some recommendations here for you. And I will go through the reasons why I love each powder individually because of the formula, the finish, and how it looks on my skin. Now I do have more drier skin, so these powders are going to tend to be better for more normal to drier skin. There are definitely more matte finish powders that are good for oily skin, but I just personally don't use them because they just make my skin look too dry and too cakey. So just keep that in mind that this is going to be for more normal to drier skin. If you do like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to my channel down below. Also hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my new upcoming videos. So let's just get started. If you'd like to see my top 10 powders for pressed and loose powders, then please keep watching. Okay, so first I'm going to start with the pressed powder category, and I'm just going to go in no particular order. But the first powder I want to mention is the one I'm using pretty much on a day-to-day basis at the moment, and it is this one here from Maybelline. This is the Fit Me Matte and Poreless Normal to Oily Skin. This is in the shade 120 Classic Ivory, so when I have more of my normal skin tone, this is when I use this powder. I am a little bit more fair. I do have a tan on at the moment. It does say matte and poreless, but I find this powder not to be too matte on me at all. It's definitely more of a satin finish, but this is just my everyday go-to powder at the moment. Number one, because it is so affordable, being a drugstore brand. And second, I just love the way it looks on my skin. It gives a beautiful, more medium coverage, and it just makes my skin look absolutely flawless. And it doesn't look too heavy or too dry on my skin at all. I do tend to not powder my whole face most of the time just because I do have dry skin. So I tend to use this more just kind of down the center of the face and under my eyes where I use concealer. But I do absolutely love this powder. It's such a smooth finish powder and it's just beautiful. It's just my everyday go-to powder at the moment, and I just love the way that it looks on my skin. Next up is my go-to powder when I do have more of a tan, and this is the one from Too Faced. This is the Born This Way Multi-Use Complexion Powder. I do use the shade Sand, and this is such a beautiful, more of a hydrating powder. It just looks so flawless on the skin. I'm wearing it on my skin today, and I just get so many compliments on how my skin looks when I wear this powder. I just find it blurs out my skin beautifully, especially around my T-zone area. And I just love the way it looks on my skin. It pairs with so many different foundations and concealers really nicely, and it just doesn't look heavy or too cakey on my skin at all. It's a really nice smooth finish powder as well, very finely milled, so it doesn't look really heavy on the skin. So definitely a powder to try out if you're looking for more of a higher end powder. Another go-to powder I am obsessed with at the moment is this one from Tilbury. This is the AIRBRUSH Flawless Finish Powder. I use the shade number 2 medium. First of all, this packaging, it's absolutely stunning. And this is such a hyped up powder, and for good reason. It is so incredibly beautiful. I can use this shade when I'm more tan or when I'm more normal fairer skin, which I really like. It's such a fine micro finish powder that you can literally barely see it on the skin. I like to use this on days when I'm not wearing much makeup at all, especially if I'm just going to do a little bit of concealer, maybe some mascara and my brows. I'll just put a little bit of this powder just to set my concealer, and I can just dust it lightly around my skin without it looking like a real heavy finish powder. This is a very lightweight powder. It's absolutely beautiful, and it is raved about for very good reason. I definitely recommend this one. Another powder I've really enjoyed using is this one from Makeup Forever. This is the Matte Velvet Skin Blurring Powder Foundation. I use the shade Y225, and this is again meant to be a matte finish, but in my opinion it's quite a smooth, more satin finish powder. It definitely doesn't look matte on my skin, and this is just such a beautiful smooth finish powder. You will see a theme amongst all the powders I use. They're definitely more of that smoother finish just because I do have dry skin, and I just find that they just look more flawless on my skin and don't show up any dryness. And this one is no exception. Being a blurring powder, it definitely blurs out your pores around the center of the face, which is where I get pores mostly. and I just find this is just such a beautiful, more of a medium coverage powder. You can definitely use this on its own if you're not wanting to use any liquid foundation. This is a really nice powder to use as a powder foundation as well. Next up, I have this powder from JOUER. This is the Soft Focus Hydrate and Set Powder. I have the shade Light, and this is once again very similar to the Charlotte Tilbury powder, is that it's a very lightweight powder, and being a soft focus powder, you can use it very minimally and it just looks so flawless on the skin. So this is definitely a powder I use when I'm just wanting that very natural everyday makeup look, or a no makeup look where I'm not wearing any foundation. I'll just apply this lightly down the center of my face or just all over my face to set my concealer, and it just looks beautiful. It's a very lightweight powder and definitely more on the hydrating side. It's not a matte finish powder at all, so another really nice lightweight powder to try. And next up is this powder from Bare Minerals. This is the Bare Pro Performance Wear Powder Foundation in the shade Golden Nude. And this is hands down my favorite powder foundation. I'm not usually a fan of powder foundations in general just because I do have dry skin. This one is so hydrating and so beautiful that I can literally wear it on its own with no makeup underneath. If I've just moisturized, used a bit of primer, I can use this powder as my foundation on my whole face when I'm more tanned, and it just looks absolutely beautiful on the skin. It's so soft, such a creamy finish powder, and it just looks amazing. If you're looking for a powder foundation that is more on the smooth and creamier finish side and not matte, this is definitely one I would recommend to try out. Next up is another drugstore powder. This one here is from the brand Australis, and it is the Fresh and Flawless Pressed Powder. I use mine in the shade Darkest Brown, which seems strange, but it is not really that dark. So the name doesn't really match the color of this powder. But this is an absolutely beautiful drugstore pressed powder. It is a bit more on the full coverage side. So if you're wanting that really glam, full beat look, this is definitely a beautiful powder to use to get that more higher coverage. And it just looks absolutely flawless on the skin. I used to wear this so much when I would do more full glam makeup looks when I was going out to events and parties and things like that. And this one just looks beautiful on the skin. This is the shade I use when I have a tan, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. Next up is another affordable brand. This one is from ColourPop. This is the No Filter Sheer Pressed Powder. I have the shade Light. I also have a darker shade for when I have a tan. And this is, as the name suggests, a very sheer, lightweight powder. And I love using this powder on a day-to-day basis when I am doing very minimal makeup once again. It is a little bit less hydrating and creamy than the other powders, but it definitely doesn't look too matte on my skin. So it's a very, very sheer finish. So if you're just wanting something very light coverage, this is definitely a powder to try out from ColourPop. And these next two powders are some of my OG favorite powders that I've used for years and years, and I always end up going back to. The first one here is from Benefit. This is the Hello Flawless powder. I have the shade Ivory, and I absolutely love this powder. I can use this when I have more fair skin or even a tan because it has that slight yellow undertone and it just looks absolutely beautiful. This is a really smooth, creamy powder foundation, and I could use this as a powder foundation on its own or just to set my concealer or foundation if I'm doing more of a full coverage look. I do love this powder when I do more of a full coverage glam because I just find it just makes my skin look so airbrushed and flawless. It's a very smooth finishing powder and I just love the way it looks. Now that I've mentioned it, I definitely want to go back and use it because I do remember how much I used to love it before. And the last pressed powder I have to mention is probably, I think, the first powder I ever purchased, and I still go back and use it all the time. I've bought so many of these powders, and this is from NARS. This is the pressed powder. I use the shade Beach, and this is pretty much a powder I think I probably used in one of my first YouTube videos, which was like 4 or 5 years ago, but I just absolutely love this powder. As you can see, the packaging is quite beat up, and on the inside there is literally barely any powder left, and that's why I stopped using it, because I just wanted to try out different powders, but I will definitely purchase another one because I do love this powder. It's just the perfect everyday powder, whether you're wanting more of a natural look or more of a full glam look. You can definitely use this powder for both. It's more of a medium coverage and it just looks so beautiful on the skin. It once again is that nice smooth creamy formula, and it just blurs out your pores on your skin as well. So definitely one of my all-time favorite powders is this one from NARS, and I have to pick up another one because there is pretty much no product left in this powder. Okay, now moving on to loose powders, and once again I'm not going to go in any particular order, I'm just going to pick up the ones as I go. At the moment I would have to say my hands down favourite loose powder is the Laura Mercier. This one is pretty much the #1 best-selling loose powder on the market, and for good reason. It is absolutely incredible. This is the loose setting powder, the translucent finish, and this is just my go-to powder. It's the one I know that's just going to look beautiful and flawless on the skin. It doesn't give that white cast look, especially when you want to take photos. That's the last thing you want. And it's just got a slight tint of colour, which I prefer with loose powders. I'm not a huge fan of the more white translucent powders. I find that they do look a little bit too light under my eyes, and they can reflect in photos. But if you are looking for a staple, really good loose powder, you definitely can't go past the Laura Mercier translucent powder. Next up is the one and only drugstore powder I have, just because I don't find drugstore loose powders to be that good quality, but this one is definitely an exception. This is from Maybelline. This is the Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder. I have the shade number 20 Light Medium, and this one is just beautiful. This is an everyday loose powder for me if I'm wanting to do more of a loose powder finish than a pressed powder. And this one is really nice for baking under the eyes. Once again, it has got some color to it, and it just looks flawless on the skin. It doesn't dry out on my skin at all. It's a very smooth, hydrating formula. And if you are looking for a drugstore really good loose powder, this is definitely my #1 and favorite to use. Next up, we have the Fenty Beauty. This is the Pro Filter Instant Retouch Setting Powder. I have the shade Banana. So it is a little bit more of that yellow toned powder. This one is stunning if you're wanting to get more of that lighter look under the eyes. This color in particular is beautiful. This is one of the most hydrating loose powders I've ever tried. It just looks so flawless on the skin. It doesn't crease under my eyes or look too heavy on the skin. It's very finely milled, and it's definitely one of my favorite powders to use. I highly recommend this one from Fenty Beauty. Next up, we have the loose powder from Marc Jacobs. This is the Perfecting Coconut Setting Powder. This one doesn't have a shade, it just comes in this one color here. And this one is very hydrating on the skin. All of the coconut products from Marc Jacobs I'm absolutely obsessed with, the bronzer especially, and this powder is just absolutely beautiful. It just gives more of a lightweight, light to medium coverage, and it's just beautiful to set my whole face. I love to use this powder for that when I'm wanting a little bit more of extra coverage, nothing too full coverage, and it does just look beautiful and flawless on the skin. So highly recommend this one from Marc Jacobs. And next up we have the Hourglass powder. This is the Hourglass Veil Translucent Setting Powder. So this one is quite translucent. It has the tiniest little pinch of color in it. This one is probably the most smoothest finishing powder out of all of the ones that I've mentioned, and I will mention. It is just beautiful. Like the name suggests, it is a veil on your skin. It just looks so flawless, so airbrushed, and so beautiful. It is more of a lighter weight powder, which I really personally like, and I just think it looks absolutely beautiful on the skin. I do get a lot of compliments when I wear this powder, and it is really beautiful to set your whole face or just to set under your eyes as well. It's really good for baking because it is more of that lighter weight, finely milled powder that it's not going to look too heavy under your eyes, and it doesn't crease at all either. Definitely one of my favorite loose powders is from Hourglass. Next up is this loose powder here from Huda Beauty. This is the Easy Bake Loose Baking and Setting Powder. I have the shade Pound Cake, so it does have a tint of color. This is by far the most full coverage loose powder that I've ever tried. If you are wanting that full glam, full beat look, this is definitely the loose powder to try out. I personally like using this with a powder puff, and I dip the powder puff in the powder and I just go along and press it into my skin. And let me tell you, it gives you the most full coverage, flawless looking makeup you'll ever see. It's absolutely incredible. So on the days when I'm wanting more of that full coverage, full glam look, this is definitely the powder I'll go for. It's not an everyday loose powder. I mean, you could use it very minimally, but the formula of it just makes it very, very full coverage. So if that's what you're looking for, I recommend this one from Huda Beauty. Next up is a very natural, everyday skin-like powder, and this is the one from Pat McGrath. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfecting Setting Powder. I have the shade Light Medium number 2, and like I said, this one is just your everyday, very natural, skin-like look. It's a very finely milled powder. All of Pat McGrath's face products are pretty much designed based around skin. She works with a lot of supermodels, so very flawless looking skin, and this is just to add that little bit of extra coverage to your skin. It's perfect for that no makeup look if you're just going to use a little bit of tinted moisturizer, a little bit of concealer, and you just want to use a loose powder to set. This would be the perfect one for that. So very lightweight, very hydrating finish powder as well. So this is a really beautiful powder from Pat McGrath. Next up we have the Anastasia Beverly Hills powder. This is the loose setting powder. I have the shade Vanilla, so a very slight tint in this powder as well. This is more of your just kind of everyday standard loose powder. It's more of a medium coverage finish, perfect for baking under the eyes. I specifically like using this one for baking because it has that more vanilla tone, which I really like. And you can also use it to set the rest of your face, but it's a very more medium coverage, definitely not too full coverage. And it's just perfect for everyday makeup looks. This is the one I choose to use when I'm going for that more natural makeup. And next up we have the Cover FX powder. This is the Perfect Setting Powder in the shade Translucent Light. So this does have a very slight pinch of color to it as well. And this one I pretty much swap in and out with my Laura Mercier powder. It's just an everyday go-to for me. Very reliable powder. It looks beautiful. I love to use it to bake under my eyes and set my whole face really lightly with a brush, and I just find it gives a really nice smooth flawless finish look to the skin. So this one's a little bit cheaper than the Laura Mercier one, so if you're wanting to try it out, I would try this one out first and see how you go, and then purchase the Laura Mercier because this one is absolutely beautiful as well. And the last loose powder I have to mention is this one here from Becca. This is the Soft Light Blurring Powder. I have the shade Golden Hour. So this one has a little bit of a golden, it looks a little bit pink as well, tone to it. This is really good for correcting, so especially under the eyes if you get more darker circles. These kind of more golden, pinkier tone powders are absolutely beautiful, and I love the packaging on this. It's so stunning. I love the clear container. And you get quite a lot of product in this one as well. So if you're looking for more of a correcting loose powder, this one is absolutely beautiful. It's more medium coverage, and it does have that blurring effect to it. It's a very soft, lightweight powder as well. So not a full coverage powder, just more of your lightweight, light to medium coverage, and absolutely beautiful. I love this one from Becca. Okay, so those were my top 10 pressed and loose powders. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what are your favorite powders to use, if there's any from the ones I mentioned today that you really love, or if there is some powders I did not mention that you really like. I would love to try them out as well, and let me know why you love them in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.